Let's go, bub.
The best tactical game Firaxis ever shipped was called a flop in front of investors. And on this list, that's not even close to the biggest injustice. Number 7 got review bombed for the one mechanic that turned out to be the best thing about it. When players saw cards in Marvel's Midnight Suns, they assumed the worst, and the publisher wound up admitting the launch failed. But the cards are abilities, and the real game is the board. You're flinging Ghost Rider into a lamppost, shoving enemies into each other, and chaining free damage before you spend a single card. Every turn is a puzzle with one perfect answer. Fair warning. The social hub between fights moves slowly, and yes, you will drink tea with Blade. But the people who wrote this off as Marvel slop keep coming back to apologize. The next game was branded a failure by its own publisher, Out Loud, with Mario standing right there.
We are now approaching our destination.
At number 6, Ubisoft told its investors that one of its biggest holiday releases had failed, and the man who directed it admitted those words hurt. That game was Mario plus Rabbids, Sparks of Hope. It throws out the grid entirely. You sprint around the battlefield, chain dash attacks through enemies, bounce off a teammate's shoulders, and only then take your shot. It's turn-based combat that feels like motion. It also launched into the same murderous holiday window that buried number 7, which explains a lot. Then the twist. Millions of copies later, it quietly caught up to its predecessor. Branded a flop in public, redeemed in silence. The next failure got a legendary studio shown the door.
Exactly. These fingers are the pride of Cairo. Jesus!
Number 5 sold so badly that its publisher wrote off 8 figures and cut loose the studio behind Shadowrun and Battletech. The crime didn't fit the punishment. The Lamplighters League is a pulp adventure. A crew of 1930s scoundrels raiding an occult cabal, sneaking through camps in real time, rigging the odds, and choosing the exact moment the turn-based fight begins. That flip from infiltration to combat is a genuinely clever idea, carried by the best cast this studio ever wrote. Late missions spike hard and lean repetitive, so call it what it is, a good game, not a lost masterpiece.
Nap time.
At today's price, it's an easy recommendation.
Let's get out of here.
At least this flop made headlines. The next game never even got an obituary.
The blessed machine.
Nobody ever called number 4 a flop, because almost nobody noticed it existed. It was buried under a mountain of bad games wearing the same license. Warhammer 40,000. Mechanicus hands you a procession of machine-worshipping cyborg priests and sends them into a tomb full of robot undead. No dice rolls. You harvest a resource from the battlefield itself and spend it to stretch your movement or overcharge your weapons, so every turn is a deterministic puzzle. When you wipe, it's your fault, and when a turn goes perfectly, you authored it. And the soundtrack, church organs and synthesizers fused into electronic liturgy. People who've never touched the game still listen to it. The next game's failure had a body count. An entire beloved series went silent. Fans spent 10 years begging for number 3 to exist. It arrived, the reviews glowed, the sales didn't, and the series hasn't said a word since. Valkyria Chronicles 4 still has no imitator. You issue orders from a top-down map, then drop into third person and run each soldier yourself, ducking through enemy fire and lining up shots with your own hands. It's the missing link between a tactics game and a shooter, painted in watercolor that hasn't aged a day. It also commits to permadeath with named, written squad mates, so when someone bleeds out in the snow because you got greedy, it stays with you. The war story takes anime detours into comedy, which won't be for everyone.
Too easy.
The studio behind the next game didn't survive the month of its own launch.
Ship the Red Marley. You take on each mission.
Number 2 is the one that still hurts. 2 weeks after launch, the studio announced it was done. Not bankrupt, exhausted.
Magical powers to sneak through enemy territory.
Shadow Gambit, the Cursed Crew, was the masterpiece of the team behind Shadow Tactics and Desperados, a decade of stealth tactics distilled into its best form. You take 3 undead pirates, each with one absurd power: a quartermaster who possesses guards, a shipwright who drags victims into portals. You pause time, line up all 3, and watch a patrol vanish in 2 silent seconds.
The real treasure.
Even saving is in on the fiction. Your ship is alive, and she rewinds time for you, commenting while she does it.
Sometimes all it takes is
Remember number 5, where the publisher dropped the studio? These founders did the math on their genre, chose their health, and closed the doors themselves.
solo will only take
So
you
what beats a studio's death for the top spot? A failure that makes even less sense. Number 1 is the game everyone who plays it seems to recommend, and the failure nobody can explain. It lost so much money, its publisher gave up on making games. But before that, if any of these stories stung, drop a like and subscribe, then tell me which flop you're giving a second chance, and which deserved the top spot instead. SteamWorld Heist 2 is the only tactics game where you aim every shot by hand. No hit percentages, no dice. You line up the barrel, bank a bullet off a ceiling, around full cover, and into a robot pirate's skull, and it feels like playing pool with guns. Between fights, you captain a submarine across an open sea, recruit steam-driven misfits, and feed a job system where every weapon teaches skills you carry between classes. Remember how number 3's flop silenced a series? This one ended its publisher's entire catalog of studios. It deserved to define the future of its genre. Instead, it's the best game its studio may never get to follow up. Give it the second life it earned.